When you're working for some of the bigger clients in our industry, working in the cloud is not an option. Working locally isn't just a convenience, it's a contractual obligation under the terms of our NDA. So this rules out a lot of the tools that are on the internet that we can use for anything AI. One tool that we can use to get around this is a tool called ComfyUI. And we're going to be focusing a lot of our tutorials on that because it can run locally and it can do almost anything of any tools that you can find online. In this video, I'm going to show you two different ways to install ComfyUI, and then we'll have a look at the user interface, how to add nodes, how to connect them together, and how to add custom nodes. Then we'll take a look at some very basic settings, just enough to get you going. And finally, we'll take a look at models, where to save them on your machine, what the different types are, where to go on the internet to get them, and even the naming convention that is frequently used that will help you understand what model you are downloading to use. ComfyUI is a node-based interface that we use to run generative AI models. Rather than simply typing in a prompt on a web interface and hitting go, you actually build up your workflows node by node, connecting them together. You can build them as large or as small as you want. Now, this might sound like a lot of work, and at the start, it can be, but this is actually why we use it. This gives us the ability to control what goes into it, what it does, and what the actual output is at the other end. As I mentioned, there are two ways to install ComfyUI, and which one you pick depends on what level of control you want. The first method is the one that I would recommend for most people. It's a desktop installer, a basic exe that installs all the dependencies and everything that you need. It's super simple and gets you up and running in the fastest possible time. The second option is to clone the Git repo. Now, as I mentioned, it's a little bit more work, and you might be wondering, why would I bother with something that's more work if there is a simple desktop installer? When you clone the Git repo, you get the option to install different Python versions, different CUDA versions, and things like that. So it gives you just a little bit more control over your environment. Now, if everything I just said went completely over your head, don't worry about it. Use the desktop installer and you'll be just fine. It's good for 99% of the work you do. It's just as you get a little bit more advanced, you're going to want that extra level of control, specifically when using some custom nodes that might require very specific Python versions. The first thing you're going to want to do is decide where you're going to install it. Now, I have a dedicated drive just for ComfyUI here. And as you can see, I actually already have an install here. So I'm going to create a new folder and we're going to do a brand new install inside of that folder. So I'm just going to call it Comfy V2. The name really doesn't matter at all. Now we're going to jump into PowerShell and do all of our work there. So the first thing I need to do is to get into that new folder that we just created. So for me, it's on the E drive, Comfy V2, and that puts us inside that folder. The first thing we're going to want to do is to clone the Git repo. And you can find the link to that on the ComfyUI website. You can find it on GitHub. You can find it in the comments below. Once you have that, simply git clone into that folder that we just created. This will take just a moment. As you can see, it's already created a ComfyUI folder in here, and it's started the clone process. And when that's done, as you can see, we have a brand new ComfyUI installed inside this folder. Now, I mentioned the reason that you might want to do this is because you might want to control something like the Python environment that you use. At the time of recording, the latest version of Python is 3.14. However, I like to use 3.12, as a lot of the ComfyUI nodes don't actually support the newer versions of Python yet. So I like to keep my Python version rolled back, but I have other projects on my machine that do use 3.14. So I don't want that interfering with my other projects. So to handle this, I'm going to create a virtual environment inside of this ComfyUI folder that we can install Python 3.12 into. So we just need to navigate inside of that folder first, inside of ComfyUI. And I'm going to create that virtual environment now. It's very simple. Command is py-3.12 for Python 3.12 -m, and we're going to tell it we're going to create a VM, and we're going to call it VM. Nice and simple. And after a moment, it will look like nothing's happened. But if we go inside the ComfyUI folder, you'll see that we have a VM in here, a virtual environment now. And the last thing that we need to do is simply activate this. The command for me, because I'm on window, is vm/scripts/activate. And you can see it's now activated because I have vm at the start. And if I want to check the Python version, Python-v, you can see I've got Python 3.12.9 installed. We have just a few more steps to go now. The next thing we want to do is install all the requirements. The first thing I want to do is upgrade my pip just to avoid a few install headaches. So quickly run this command and then we can move on from there. And the first thing we need to install is PyTorch. This one's a long one, so I'm just going to copy and paste this one. And this will take a little bit of time because it's actually quite a large install. And here we go. Just a few minutes later, you can see it has installed quite a lot. The last thing we want to install is basically the ComfyUI requirements. And this one's super simple. Inside the ComfyUI folder, you'll notice there is a text document called requirements. This just tells the installer what it needs. You don't need to know what any of this is. You don't need to worry about it. You just need to tell it to install those things. So that's pip install, which is what we upgraded earlier, just to make sure we were using the latest. And install the requirements.txt. So I'm going to run that. Again, this will take a few minutes. Once that completes, you can see it installed a whole bunch of things. And this is actually all we need now to be able to use ComfyUI from here. To run it, we simply type Python main.py. And all that's going to do is it's going to run this main Python file from here. And after a moment, you can see that it gives you the info at the end. To see the GUI, you go to this address. So simply open up a web browser. Paste this into the address bar. And here we have ComfyUI. Before we jump in and look at the UI and nodes, I just want to take a moment to chat about the node manager. This does, as you might expect, it allows you to add and remove custom nodes. And if you use the desktop installer, you're good to go. However, if you use the Git installer, this isn't automatically enabled and you won't see it in your UI. We just need to do a couple of quick things to get this set up. When we installed ComfyUI from GitHub, you'll recall that we used pip install to install something called requirements.txt. If we go inside our ComfyUI install, you'll see that there's also a file called manager_requirements.txt. And we just need to do the same pip install with this. So we're just going to make sure we're inside our ComfyUI install with the VM active. That's important. And we're just going to do pip install -r manager_requirements.txt. And as you can see, that ran really quickly. Now, to make sure that we see the manager when we launch ComfyUI, we just need to make a slight modification to what we use to start it up. So before, with our VM active inside the install, we were running Python main.py. To get the manager up, we just need to add a flag on the end, which is -- enable manager. Make sure there's a space in there and run that. And then when ComfyUI is ready, if we browse to the UI, we should see the node manager enabled. If you use the Git installer to install ComfyUI and you're getting frustrated with typing the same thing over and over again in the terminal just to launch the UI, we can actually solve this problem with a very simple bat file that we can save on our desktop. We can double click it and it will do all of that work for us. The process is very simple and it's just a few lines, and obviously I'll paste the code down below for you. But basically, we just want to create a new text document somewhere. I'm going to create it on my desktop and we're going to call it something useful. ComfyStart. And importantly, we're going to change the .txt to .bat. So it becomes a bat file. Windows is going to complain about us changing the file type. Just say yes to it. And we have an empty bat file. Now, if we open this up, I'm using Sublime here, but you can use Notepad or whatever you want. So grab that code from below. And we just need to change one thing for you. You just need to change the file path to wherever your ComfyUI is installed. Just to give you an idea what this is doing, the echo off is just stopping it from complaining about things. Obviously, we're CDing into our install directory, activating the VM, and then running the Python main start. If you've been through the manager part of this tutorial as well, then you'll have the enable manager flag. If you don't have the manager installed yet, just remove that part. And then pause just simply keeps the terminal open. So if we save that, and now if we double click that, it opens up a command terminal for us. You can see once that's done, it's ready to go at the usual address. Let's have a very quick look at the UI together. There's not much to it, and you're probably familiar with most of it anyway. When you first launch ComfyUI, you're probably going to see something like this, which is the default workflow that ComfyUI ships with. Now, ComfyUI calls a group of nodes that we put together a workflow, and that's what we're looking at here in what's called the canvas. Navigating this is fairly easy. This is left mouse, click to drag around, scroll wheel to zoom in and out. If you hold down Control, you can drag and select. You can hold down Shift to select multiple things. On the top right here, this is where we are going to execute our workflows from when we're ready to have a look at it. So the workflow I have here, it's a very simple one. It's going to create me an image of a bunny rabbit. And it's going to save the image out at the other end. To run it, you simply hit the run button. Now, when ComfyUI is running something, you'll see a green border appear around one of the nodes. That's the node that is currently running. It did run all of the other nodes, but they ran so quick you probably didn't actually notice it. When it's running, you can see we have one active up in the top corner here. And this is saying I have one active workflow running right now. You can run multiple workflows depending on how good your graphics card is. But one thing to notice here is the total here, 67%. You can see there's actually two different bars kind of progressing here. The one that's further along, the kind of lighter blue one, this is how far the workflow is through in total. So it's actually got all the way through all of these nodes on the left and has hit this K-sampler node here and only has a couple of nodes left to go. The more solid blue on top of it is the node that's currently running, which is the K-sampler node, as you can see here. And underneath it tells you that's running as currently at 45%. And when that gets to the end, the next ones will run. These will run very, very quickly, so you won't actually see those running either. So just while that's running, I'm going to chat about this extensions button is the ComfyUI node manager that we installed in a previous chapter on this video. This is simply for looking for custom nodes, nodes that aren't installed by default. These are nodes that are made by the team at ComfyUI and members of the community. There are so many of them. We're not going to go over them all. We will use a lot of them as we go through various different tutorials, but we will cover them as and when we use them. Just close that out. Our K-sampler is still running. It's nearly finished. There you go. And if you saw the VAE decode quickly flashed up and ran, and the save image actually output a bunny for us. And you can see that is no longer active because it is complete. And as that has finished, we can now show you the menu on the left-hand side here. The menu in the top left is your standard file, edit, save, all of that kind of thing. We'll have a look at something on that in just a second. But the next one down, this assets one, this is where all of our generations will be stored, whatever that happens to be that we generated. So in our case, it's a bunny rabbit is being stored here. If we regenerated, we'd start getting more and more of them here. The next button on the left is nodes. Now, this is different to the manager one. These are nodes that are installed by default with ComfyUI, and you can drag and drop any of the nodes from this menu onto your canvas here. Again, I'm not going to go over all of them. We will discuss them as and when we get to it. The next option down is models. This is where we can load all of our models that we downloaded from the internet from. So I don't actually have that many right now. I have a couple of Lauras. And interestingly, I can actually just drag and drop this onto the canvas and it loads the correct node for me. So I don't even really need to go into there if I know exactly what I'm looking for. Underneath models is workflows. And as I mentioned, this is a workflow. This is where all your workflows are saved. Now you notice that I'm on one called Startup here. And let's say I want to create a new workflow. And I'm going to drag a couple of nodes on anything. Let's just say this is my workflow. Coming back to saving, if I do file and save, and I save this as a, let's call it basic workflow, and hit confirm. Back in workflows, you can see I have the basic workflow here, but you'll notice I actually have all of mine grouped just to keep them neat. Like in the tutorials, I have 91 here. I don't want those just filling this up. You can't actually just drag and drop in this UI. There's two ways to go about this. These are stored in a folder in your ComfyUI install under user, default, workflows. And you can see here, the folder structure matches what I have on the left here. Now you could just drag these JSON workflows about here. If I come back to ComfyUI and refresh, that basic one has now gone into where I just drag and dropped it to. Another option when you go to File, Save, let's do Save As. You can actually create a new folder or anything here. Let's say my new folder / my test workflow. And I hit save, and you can see that's created a new folder with that in. And if we take a look back at this, you can see there's my new folder with my test workflow in. Moving on, apps. I'm not going to cover this right now. This is as something for a whole other tutorial. Templates is a useful one if you're looking for something to just get you going. ComfyUI provide a whole bunch of different workflow templates that you can browse. There are hundreds and hundreds of them by different categories, and you can load these up and you can basically start from there with them. Most of them come with a little instruction guide on how to use them. In this chapter, we're going to go over how to create nodes, how to connect them together, and I'll just give you a brief explanation of what some of the very basic nodes do. I'm not going to go too in depth because there is a lot, and we will cover custom nodes and what these nodes actually do as and when they become needed in following tutorials. We're going to go through and we're going to create this default workflow from scratch, just so that I can explain what everything here is doing, as these are some of the nodes you'll use more often, and show you how to find them and connect them. Now we're going to work from left to right, and we're going to start up here with this load checkpoint. This loads our AI model, the thing that's going to do the actual work for us. I'm going to start a new workflow by clicking on the little plus in the top left. To load models, there's a couple of ways we can do this. So this is a checkpoint, which is what we basically call our models. And I can simply drag and drop one of my models onto the canvas. And you can see I have the load checkpoint model here, which matches this one here. The one below that is called load clip. And this is a type of model that decodes your text into something that the AI model can understand. And you'll notice that that is actually connected to two clip text encode nodes, which is where we write what we actually want the model to do. I'm going to start with the clip text encode node. Now, another way that you can load nodes is by double clicking on the canvas and searching for it. So I'm going to type clip, and there at the top one is the clip text encode. Now we want this load clip connected to that. And another way we can create nodes nice and quickly is I can drag out from the input. I'm going to drag backwards. When I release the left mouse button, it suggests to me the most likely things that I want. And I actually know that I want a clip loader, which is here in the menu. So I can click that, and then it has loaded that clip for me. This drag and drop works both ways. So if I drag out from the load clip to the right and let go, I get different options. And this time I want the clip text encode, and I get another one of the same node type. At this point, it's worth noting that all of our outputs and inputs are color coded. So if I delete these connections here, you can see that the clip out and the clip in are the same color, which means they will connect together quite nicely. However, if I try to drag something out, say this model, which is purple, you can see that the clips gray out because they're not compatible. So they won't allow us to connect those two things together. The next thing we want is this empty latent image. When you are working on image generation, the model needs something to generate an image from. So if you're working image to image, you're obviously pumping an image into it, and you convert that to a latent image, which I will show you later. But if you're not working image to image, if you're just doing text to image, then it just needs this empty latent image to be plugged into it. So that has a starting point. It's basically like here's a canvas, draw on that. So let's double click and create that. So I'm just going to type empty latent image and drag that down. As you can see, this has a pink kind of output, and we don't have anything for that to go into yet. I'm going to drag that out over to the right here, and I can drag through these nodes. You can see it's all grayed out because it doesn't accept these. I'm going to drop, and it's going to give me the options of what do you want, and I actually want a K-sampler node. Now, if you remember from back when we were running this workflow in the UI overview, the K-sampler is the thing that took up most of the time. This is the thing that does the work with image generation. Once we've put all of these nodes together, they run into the K-sampler node, and then it outputs the image. So let's come back and just take another look at it. We've already got the latent image connected because we just created that. But you can see we have coming out of the clip, the color that comes out of it is slightly different because at this point it has been encoded into something different. It's no longer text. The K-sampler has a positive and negative one, which is why we have two. So this top one, we're going to call our positive. So I'll double click on it. This is going to be our positive, and I'm going to make this green just for visual style. And the bottom one here is going to be our negative prompt. And I'm going to make that red, just so you know. And then the conditioning, I'm going to pull this out into the negative of the K-sampler and the positive into the positive of the K-sampler. And you'll notice that this one accepts the model as well. You're probably wondering why we loaded the model and didn't use it. Well, now we're going to plug that into the K-sampler. The K-sampler has a bunch of different options like seed, steps, CFG, all of those things that we will look at together in a future video. For right now, I'm just going to get this working. So you can see, again, the K-sampler has this pink latent out. And if you remember, we put in a latent image, which is an image format that a computer understands. But what we need to do is we need to decode that into something that we can see. So if we drag and drop out of that, you'll see that we get a VAE decode option. And this is basically what does that conversion for us. And then this is where, remember that VAE that we pushed till later? This is basically telling it how to do that decode. Like, what method do we want it to use as a decode? So we need to do the VAE loader. So we need to load a VAE. This is what tells it how we want that decode to be done. Finally, now that we've turned it into an image that we can understand as humans, we just want to see that image. So we can either save that image. I'm just going to hit preview, and then let's run it together. So let's say we want a T-Rex in the rain. So put that in the positive one, and I don't want it to be sunny in the negative. Now I'm going to run this workflow. Because this is the first time that I've run this workflow, these first few things are going to run a little slower. It has to load the model into memory first, and that can take a moment. So I'm just going to hit run, and you can see that they took a moment. Once they're done, we can see we get back to the K-sampler running. And as you can see, when that's finished, we have a T-Rex in the rain. One really cool thing people don't realize is that when you generate an image in ComfyUI, you can save it as a PNG, and it saves the workflow with it. So if we have a look at our dinosaur that we created here, under the assets, I'm just going to download it. And then if I open up that folder, I have the image downloaded here. I'm going to start a new workflow here, bring this back. And if I drag and drop this image now into the UI, you can see that it recreates the entire workflow. So more often than not, when you find an image online that you like that was generated in ComfyUI, the user tends to provide the PNG file that you can use to recreate the workflow to see how they made it. Now, crucially here, it has to be a PNG. JPEGs do not store the data. So if you find a JPEG, it's not going to work. Look for a PNG file. When you're downloading models off the internet, you're going to want to make sure you save them in the right folder in ComfyUI because there's a few different types, and if you don't store them in the correct place, ComfyUI simply won't be able to find them. So if you take a look inside your ComfyUI install folder, there's a folder called models, and inside that is a group of subfolders. Now, Windows has organized these folders nice and neatly for me, but you can see inside ComfyUI, it's actually the same list, just in a bit more of a messy order. But as you can see, I have checkpoints here, and I have my epic realism and my Quen image, and you can see them both here. A checkpoint is basically an all-in-one kind of model that contains a diffusion model, a clip encoder, and a VAE. So if we jump inside the folder, we can see that the models are of a type .savetensors. This is the modern format to use, but you may sometimes see a .ckpt for checkpoint file. That's an older file format that was found to be less secure. To be honest, with the rate that AI is progressing, you're very unlikely to come across a few, but just know what that is just in case you do. There's going to be times when you don't necessarily want to use the same diffusion model as, let's say, the clip encoder or the VAE. So you can load each of these individually as well, but these need to be stored in different places. So as you can see here, we have a diffusion model, a clip, and a VAE, and they refer to respective folders in this model folder. So we have a clip folder, which has my clip encoders in it, diffusion models, and right down the bottom, VAE. Now, obviously, there's a lot more folders than that. We'll go over those things as and when we need them. But let's take a look at these three right now. So the diffusion model is what your data set is, what everything was trained on. And it's largely what's going to dictate what your output looks like, with the exception of a couple of other nodes we'll look at in a minute. A clip is a way of encoding what you've written. So the prompt that you've given it in plain English gets re-encoded into a mathematical language that the computer understands. And the VAE is a way of translating the latent image, which is the image the computer actually generates, into an image that you can understand. A couple of other nodes that we haven't looked at yet. The first is a LoRa, which stands for low rank adaptation. It's basically a much smaller diffusion model, but it's used to fine-tune the result. So we use these to create very specific styles or to add details that the main model would have normally missed. This usually sits in the middle of our workflow after the model is loaded, but before the image is generated. The last one is control net, and this is quite a big category on its own, but basically a control net is used to ensure consistency across generations. This is frequently used in video creation where we have characters and we want to make sure the character's face remains consistent frame to frame. Now you're ready to start making your own creations, but the question is, where do I go to get models? Well, there are two places on the internet that people typically go to. Let me show you those right now. The first one that most people come to, because it is the most user-friendly, is civitai.com. Here you can find models, diffusion models, checkpoints, LoRa's, you name it, everything is on here, and they're all created and modified by the community. If we take a look here, you can see here we have a checkpoint called Perfect Deliverance. And if we click into this, as long as you are logged in on the site, I can download this model. As you can see here, it's 6.62 gigabyte, which is why I have my own drive for this, because the models take up a lot of room. If we come back and have a look, say, at one of these LoRa's, so the Velvet Mystic Fantasy style, you see this is a LoRa, and it's only 132 megabytes. The models you'll find on Civit AI are models that have been adapted by the community. The more advanced users will come to a website called Hugging Face. Now, as you can see, this is not as visually appealing, but here's where you'll tend to find research models and the original models that haven't been adapted. Navigating it is not actually as hard as it looks. You can browse by type. So if I want to do, let's say, image to image, I just filter by image to image, and you can see all of the models that they have here. They have 100 pages of models of this. And we can click on any one of these. So let's have a look at Black Forest Labs. And we can see the images that were generated from this. Along the top, we'll see a files and versions. And this is kind of like a Git repo, basically, where you can download the models from. So here's the Safe Tensors version for this one, 9.57 gig. I can simply click on the download button, and that will download for us.